Saturday Morning Live. Well, Josh, you really messed that one up. But
we did the entire show privately.
Yeah, and then we were like, why is no one watching? Maybe we're just not good at this anymore. But now, hopefully, it's streaming live. So if this is your first time joining Network 1901 on YouTube, this is our Saturday Morning Live show. It's a little different than our other types of shows here on Network 1901's YouTube page, because on Wednesdays and Fridays we have kind of these short form analysis videos, and on Mondays we have the DCC podcast in its video form. So if you're interested in any of those kinds of videos, then go watch those. If you're not a huge fan of this live show, that's okay. We got something for you. We have something for everyone on this channel, right?
I think so.
But today, specifically on Saturday Morning Live, we are going to be talking about what makes the Disney Renaissance era, like, the best, right?
Yeah.
Luckily for me, my co-host here on Saturday Morning Live is our resident Disney historian, Joshua Taylor.
That's me.
Woo!
Yay!
Josh
yeah.
Taylor.
Thanks.
So I have a question for you, Josh.
Okay.
Can you just like explain to me what the heck the Disney Renaissance even is?
Disney Renaissance, if you're gonna kind of break down just a Renaissance, is kind of like a second coming, right? Like it's a rebirth for like the original Renaissance, like the art Renaissance and music Renaissance. A few centuries back, but for a Disney Renaissance, I think it's rise again to pop culture fame. For a long time, people thought that it was just kid stuff. They weren't making really great films, and then all of a sudden, kind of a trickle of different things happened, and the movies started to become more popular again. And I think that just kind of comes down to a bunch of different things that we'll get into on the show.
Could you explain to me a little bit of like the like you've explained to me the definition, right? So yeah. Can you give me a little bit of the timeline and kind of like the major players?
Yeah. So I think when we look at when it really started, obviously Michael Eisner got brought in from Paramount Pictures, and not just him, but a bunch of other people too, right? So you have like Tom Schumacher, you've got Roy Disney, the son of Roy E. Disney, who was really involved in animation things. You've also got Howard Ashman, Alan Menken, who were a brilliant writing team, and like before Eisner took over, the Disney department in animation was very much, here's all the old guys that Walt worked with, and here are these new college grads. But the college grads have zero chance of moving up because all of these older guys were there. And college grads who got frustrated, like a Tim Burton, like a John Lasseter, like a Don Bluth, all left and did things on their own, right? Like Tim Burton went off and became a famous director. John Lasseter helped found Pixar, which was eventually then worked with Disney. You had Don Bluth, who went off and did An American Tail and The Land Before Time, and all of those people. I think that when Eisner came in, he saw all of these people that had such potential, like those guys, and decided to kind of move them up. And when he brought in Katzenberg, they moved everybody off the studio lot, and they downsized the team and kind of gave them a little bit of free rein to do whatever they wanted. Mm-hmm. And I think it allowed them to be a little bit more creative and to rethink the processes that make a Disney animated film.
Right. So it's basically bringing in like this dream team of people from all these like outside sources, instead of kind of like having the same minds working out the problems that they haven't been able to solve in the past. Right.
Right.
So why keep having the same people try to figure out what's going on and how to make it better if you could just bring in experts, right? Like I'm bringing in my Disney historian expert right now because I'm not a great Disney historian. I could go and I could like say okay, like I'll write down and research. Like I know where to go for research. I could research all the stuff that you're saying, and then I could say, well, now I'll read off this list.
Right, but it's all up here.
It's all up there.
In my head.
So I hired you to do this show today.
How much are you paying me for this show?
I'm paying you with love.
Could anybody tell her how much she should be paying me?
Anyway, so now I'm gonna go on to the. I have another question for you, Josh.
Yeah.
Can you give us like maybe some of the iconic movies that are in the Disney Renaissance era, please?
Well, let me tell you about these movies. I think you have to start with, and I know it's not a Disney animated feature film, but you have to start with Roger Rabbit. I think that Steven Spielberg helped really in one of, in so many of the things that were happening. Steven Spielberg came in and really wanted to reinvigorate animation, and that ended up also going over to Warner Brothers when he did Tiny Toons and Animaniacs. But Steven Spielberg coming in and saying, I want to do this project, and was able to bring Disney, Warner Brothers, all these other cartoon animation companies together for this film, got people thinking about animation again, got people thinking about some of their favorite cartoons, and I think it...
Because it had like every cartoon in it.
It had everybody. But then I think it reinvigorated the team at Disney, because they saw, and not only Disney animators were working on it, a ton of animators from all around the world were working on it, especially a team in London, but it reinvigorated the Disney group to want to do more and to kind of push their boundaries, and it got, the fire lit. And so, that's when you see a movie like The Little Mermaid come out, and it has all the potential in the world to do wonders. And then, it continues pretty much throughout the 90s until, a movie like, I don't know, like Lilo and Stitch is okay, but like a movie like Home on the Range kind of bombed. And so we kind of define the end of that era when movies start slumping. And so it's like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Right. And why do you think that something like Home on the Range bombed?
It didn't follow a formula. I think that they set up with Disney, right? Like Howard Ashman and Alan Menken came in and saw what made Disney movies so great before. Like a Snow White or a Cinderella did so well because it was a musical. The music drove the story forward, and you connect with the hero, or in those cases the princess, right away with a song. And that was also the Broadway style. Those guys came from just doing Little Shop of Horrors into doing The Little Mermaid, and I think that they brought a fun style of musical to it. And now, right, anytime you hear one of those Disney Renaissance songs, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm taken right back to it. Like, you know exactly what that scene is, you know what that movie is. And so I think they understood that you connect with music on a different scale. And the animation team was doing all kinds of innovative things too. They were working with color, and they were just kind of changing things up. So
so I just want to take a quick break right here to say, if you like what we're doing on Network 1901, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page and hit that bell notification icon so that you get notified when a video like this goes live. And when it actually goes live and isn't marked as private, and then we do the whole show by ourselves and are like, we're talking to no one.
We were honestly wondering what was happening.
But that's okay.
It was my
fault. You can also subscribe to anywhere that you listen to podcasts to Network 1901, because we have 3 podcasts a week as well as the 4 videos a week here on our YouTube channel. But also, you should go, if you have an Instagram and you have a Twitter, make sure you follow Network 1901 on both of those, because that is a great way to talk to us. Obviously, YouTube comments or the live chat is also a great way, but we love chatting with people just kind of like all day throughout the day about not only the stuff that we're doing, but just like other stuff that's going on in the world that gets posted about on Instagram and Twitter.
And you've kind of taken over the department of social media, so you know that people are posting all day long. So you can harp on me. If you
want to talk, especially if you want to talk to me, that's the best way to do it. Because, like, everyone else, like, checks, like, the YouTube comments and stuff, but I'm, like, always on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah. And so in the chat, because we were just kind of talking about our goof up here, Alexis and Stuji were saying they were glad that they rang the bell icon. So do that on YouTube, because we went live at 9:30 instead of 9 a.m. because we already did the show at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
We're just doing it again a second time. So thank you guys for clicking the bell and knowing that we were going to go live. We appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
But while you're kind of chatting here in the chat, we'd love to know what movies are your favorite from the Disney Renaissance, and we can get back to those a little bit later.
Yeah. So why don't you talk amongst yourselves about that because I am now going to ask Josh another question.
Oh.
Before he gets to read the chat, I want to know what you think. Why you think we love the Disney Renaissance era so much.
I think it does come down to music a little bit. That recognition in music, but I think the stories are really done well. You look at a movie like The Little Mermaid, and it follows a character that you can fall in love with, even though they were afraid that it would be a girl movie. They were able to incorporate moments that are good for boys, right? Like Sebastian's a fun character for boys. Flounder, Eric is kind of a character that men would want to be, even though we don't know a lot about him. That would come later with like Aladdin, to be able to have a prince that actually has some depth. But the songs, the animation style, the characters were all really great. Ursula is a fantastic villain, and I think some of the best Disney villains, maybe outside of Maleficent, come from this time period. I would say Maleficent, Cruella de Vil, and Captain Hook are really the three from an older generation. And then, here you have just tons of great villains. Ursula, Jafar, Hades, just so many. And so, that all kind of plays into why we walk away from these films loving them so much. I mean, why do you love some of these films?
Well, I mean, I think it just has to do with, I think like mine goes a little deeper than just the films. Mine comes with this idea, and I think it comes from watching this documentary called Waking Sleeping Beauty, which we both watched multiple times, and we both really love it, and I recommend it highly. It's this idea, and you've kind of already talked about this, of like the major players that came in and building this dream team, and I just like love that idea of like these people are so specialized in like the thing that they're doing, and like they're all just like given this creative space to be an artist. Why are you laughing at me?
I'm not. I'm reading the chat, and it just it got me.
Oh, this? Is it this?
Yeah, Story, you said the porg behind you was peering into my soul, and that's funny. So.
But yeah, I love this idea of this, like, I just imagine like the studio, and I just imagine all these departments and all these people that are just kind of like keeping to themselves, and they're just like creating, pumping out all this content.
Yeah.
And like I like to imagine that that's what like we're doing here at Network 1901.
Sure,
like,
we're the new Renaissance.
Maybe. I don't know. I think of it in that way.
That kind of gets me onto another point though, like when you look at when Eisner was in charge and what he did right, like was synergistic around the board. So you had a movie like The Lion King that was doing so well in the theater that they immediately greenlit TV series, a Timon and Pumbaa TV series. They greenlit Parade in the theme parks. They were going to add the Festival of the Lion King show to the Animal Kingdom. They had the Broadway musical. So it was just like they took one thing that did well and they just spread it out to as many different avenues as they could. And of course, like merchandising and marketing was huge.
Well, and they found the right people to do those things. That's like that's what I think is like the most important part.
Yeah, and they were firing on all cylinders. So you had like the movies here, and then you had like the TV studio here that was having its own renaissance with like a DuckTales, and then you have the Disney Afternoon that's going on, and like it's obviously a very different style of animation because it has to be faster because it has to come out every week. But you had those people doing those type of shows, and then you had the other group of people that were doing a Goofy movie, and you had a studio in Paris, a studio in Orlando, a studio in Hollywood. Like you just had everyone firing on all cylinders all the time, and it did start to eventually take its toll by the end of the 1990s, and we covered that on the Disney Decade podcast. But there's so many things that were all going right at the same time, and the marketing team was at that point fantastic. I don't think there's ever been a better marketing team anywhere than at Disney in the 1990s.
Right. Well, and let me get back. I really want to get back to, like, you were just talking about DuckTales, and I really want to get back to that, but I want to wait until I ask you kind of, like, the next question, just because I think that's, like, it's a good, like, you'll find out why. But I did want to ask you something else. What the Disney Renaissance seems to have influenced film, especially animated film, now. And, like, anything that came after it seems to be kind of influenced by it because of how crazy popular it ended up being and how crazy successful it ended up being. So, what specifically, in regards to, like, trends and, like, innovations that Disney brought to the table during the Disney Renaissance era, do you think are, like, very noteworthy to talk about?
Well, obviously they worked with Pixar, for Toy Story and stuff, and so they had a knowledge of computers. And one of the things with the younger generation coming in is they didn't have this idea of, like, it has to be done this way because this is how Disney's always done it. So bringing in computers and doing stuff like with Mulan, where you have this kind of avalanche coming down the mountain, or like when you're in The Lion King, for example, like when you have all the wildebeests coming in, those kind of computer animated moments at the time seemed seamless. Now you can kind of point out that they're computer animated.
Yeah.
But at the time, they seemed seamless. They took a lot of work off of all of the artists. Excuse me. When you look at a movie like 101 Dalmatians, and like having talked to Rolly Crump, and he did this, his job on that movie was to add the black dots to all of the animation, and that has to be so tedious and time consuming. So having a computer generated system that allows you to just multiply a bunch of wildebeests coming, through this space.
It allows for, like, the whole thing is that, like, Disney animation has always been these forms of art, right? Like, it's not just, like, throwing something out there to get a bunch of, I want to say views, because I'm like YouTube world right now thoughts, but, like, they're not just trying to sell movies. They're trying to sell you on, like, a lifestyle, on a brand, on, like, existing in a world where these characters almost influence everything you do. Right? Like, there are people who love mermaids so much now because of Ariel. Like,
oh yeah,
like, that's why they love mermaid. That's why they want to be a mermaid, is because of Ariel. Like, it is their life. And I think that's what Disney did so well during the Renaissance. They sold you, like, a lifestyle in their movies. Like, and then it carried over and it became the same thing as, like, what Walt Disney originally did with Disneyland, where there was a lot of crossover between movies and parks, where, like, you brought up like, already that they, like, did all these, like, Broadway musical versions of stuff. But they like, back when Disneyland first opened, there was just so much, like, cross promotion with the movies, the television spots. Like, what was the Wonderful World of Disney, right? That was the name of the show that Walt did.
Yeah.
Was it?
Well, there was a couple of different ones, but it was like it started with Disneyland just as the TV show.
Okay, yeah. So, and then it brought crossed over into the parks, and you see that a lot with, like, the Disney Renaissance films. You don't really see that much with the films today. You see it somewhat,
Right, Frozen's a good example of what they did, but it almost like came too late. Like they didn't expect Frozen to be so great,
right?
So that like all of beyond like some merchandising, like all of the other stuff that they did came so much later,
right?
But like,
well, I guess like the Little Mermaid, like the under the or the sea.
The Little Mermaid Under the Sea ride, is that what you're saying?
Whatever it's called, yeah.
Came so late, yeah. But like you look at like Beauty and the Beast, did so well in the theater, and like immediately they greenlit the Broadway show, and then that was like the continuation of that, and like you had the Belle and Beast like meet and greets in the park. They were incorporated into the parades. Like, they were and like that, but so quickly.
Yeah, now it's like when you see like stuff like that being incorporated into the parks, it's like maybe a character meet and greet, unless it's like a princess lineup. It's like maybe we're gonna get a character in the park from the movies,
right? Yeah.
And like
I was actually having a conversation with Skylar the other day, and he was saying that he's worried that characters from like Zootopia or Big Hero 6, Wreck-It Ralph, those kind of like quote unquote boy movies are already lost. Like you can meet Nick. I see Nick every now and then at California Adventure, and there's talks of a Zootopia kind of maybe going into Animal Kingdom, but at this point, a movie like Big Hero 6, like what does it have to offer anyone? Like there's nothing. There's some merchandising, but like barely, like,
right. Well, and I just want to like the thing I wanted to like ask you before or talk about from before was you were talking about DuckTales and like there's this, we went to the World of Disney store yesterday and we saw all this merchandise.
Oh yeah.
Well, okay, mugs at least right now of DuckTales, of Darkwing Duck, and of Tailspin.
And Chippendale Rescue
Rangers. Oh yeah, and Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
All four.
So our thoughts is like this stuff is probably going to be coming back in some form. You just did a video on the YouTube page, which everyone after this definitely go watch it. It's about DuckTales. It's the last video that was posted, so it's really easy to find. And you're talking about kind of like how DuckTales got moved from Disney XD
to Disney Channel.
To Disney Channel, which is a huge deal because Disney Channel is like Disney's pride and joy.
Right. Well, it goes out to a lot more people too. Right.
So, and we assume that maybe these other Disney animated shows are coming back, and I'm just kind of thinking about like why that is, and we were kids that grew up, even if we caught like maybe the tail end of it or the reruns of these shows. I know that was kind of like how I consumed it, but now I'm looking at these shows as like very nostalgic, and that's why I love them, but they seem to be working with a new audience again.
Yeah, well, and it's perfect timing too, because right, like we are the generation that grew up with the Disney Renaissance,
and now we have the money to buy the stuff of our childhood.
And the people who have children, like I just saw an interview with Bobby Moynihan, who voices Louie on DuckTales.
Yeah, and he's also on Saturday Night Live, which is not affiliated with Saturday Morning Live.
But he was saying, it's so thrilling as a voice actor, as an actor in general, but as a voice actor for DuckTales, to be excited about this show that he grew up loving as a kid, and that he's now seeing when he interacts with fans, they have that same excitement for the exact same show that he loved as a kid. And like, it's just a generational thing. Like, it just seemed like it worked for us, and now it's just being revived again.
And now go over and watch Josh's YouTube video, and it'll crush all your dreams that you ever had.
Sorry.
It really hits you deep.
Yeah.
Josh likes to do that.
Sorry.
But now I'd like to turn it over to the chat and see what you guys have to think. Not only do I want to know why you think that the Disney Renaissance is so iconic, but also I want to know what your favorite Disney Renaissance movie and television show, but mainly movies are, and why. Also, if you're watching this on the replay, make sure you just say it in the comments because we'll get back to you there too. Obviously, watching it live is the best way to talk with us and to talk with everybody else that's in the chat.
Over Droid 7, Brittany brought up that they did a ride for Frozen pretty quickly at Epcot, which I would still say wasn't fast enough. Or even like the Frozen show at the Hyperion Theater at California Adventure wasn't fast enough compared to like Beauty and the Beast having the Broadway show right away, The Lion King having the Broadway show right away. The Lion King was had its own afternoon parade like immediately after The Lion King came out. So there were a lot of things, like of course now The Lion King doesn't have like its own dark ride, and like the Ariel Under the Sea Adventure Voyage, Little Mermaid, whatever you want to call it, that ride came out decades later. But there have been a number of times where marketing did so well, and like they brought up that like Big Hero 6 will have the TV show on Disney XD and it'll still live on there, but I am not sure, like it just seems so weird when you have the Broadway shows, you have all the merchandising, you have the theme parks, you have the TV, and you have the movies, and they're only giving it this one avenue, right? Like they're not trying to divulge it into everything, which is what they were doing with almost every movie at that point in time.
Well, and I think this would also be maybe an interesting Saturday morning live chat where why some movies get like kind of permanent slots in the parks, whereas some just get like lost. Very temporary slots. No, not lost, but just like Tarzan had a huge show, but
at Animal Kingdom.
But like
it's Tarzan's Treehouse.
Oh yeah, and Tarzan's Treehouse, right? Yeah. Right. I didn't even think of that. But like, and why some things just get like a character in a parade. And I think that'd be really interesting in talking about like the staying power versus something more permanent. If they're testing stuff out, that kind of stuff. But Brittany also says that The Lion King and Pocahontas are all around great films, from animation to the music and story. But, and then Alexis says, I think the Disney Renaissance is so popular because it was Disney's big comeback.
I think, and so Jay from the Story Geeks said, what are the big live action Renaissance movies? And I would say to him that
to you, Jay,
that
he's saying it to you.
There's a different thing to the Renaissance and live action movies for Disney, because I think that the family comedy came out of the late 80s into the 90s that did really well. Like, obviously it's not a Disney film, but like The Sandlot, it still resonates with a lot of people, right? And so that's something that was big. Like, and sports movies kind of came out of that as well, especially from Disney, like the Mighty Ducks. That was such a huge franchise that it spawned. Again, like, here's another thing that just spawned its own sports team, and spawned its own TV show, and like they just continued to like do all kinds of stuff with the Mighty Ducks name.
Why don't you need to do a video on that, and we need to just go the Mighty Ducks Arena is right down the street from where we live right now.
Is down there, and then Angels in the outfield, and then the Anaheim Angels. It was all synergistic, and like I think that the live action movies and comedy, Heavyweights is a great movie too.
Heavyweights is the best movie ever.
Like those kind of like kid comedies that also adults can watch.
Oh, I watch Heavyweights
and then,
on the regular.
And then like those sports movies like Mighty Ducks, like Angels in the Outfield, like Cool Runnings, those type of movies.
See, everything from the Disney Renaissance makes you go, oh my god, that movie, oh my god, that movie,
Yeah, and I think that was, now we're in a time where Disney's live action comes from Marvel or Lucasfilm, or is a remake of one of their animated films. They don't really have a ton, maybe besides the Pirates films, that's new. And they've done sports films. They've kind of continued that lineage, and they've done the Disney nature films, but not to the degree.
That's true.
Like, no one cares about like $1 Million Arm as much as they ever cared about the Mighty Ducks.
No, I don't even know what $1 Million Arm is.
See, exactly.
You just said that, and I was like, he's gonna say $1 Million Baby, and I don't know why.
Yeah. Also, The Big Green. Yeah, The Big Green, the soccer film.
And Peter, who is my dad, says that's why the All-Star resorts are the best, and I think that's actually true. Like, we actually prefer to stay in the All-Star, and if I go back and do Art of Animation sometime, or the Pop resorts, because it's that same idea. It's like these icons that we're all so nostalgic about that are just like littered around the resorts. And you don't care if you're in like a value resort, because every morning you wake up and you get to look out and you see all these like really classic characters from the Disney Renaissance. I mean, especially Art of Animation.
Right.
And like especially Art of Animation. Art of Animation is still a little too pricey for me to to consider when there are cheaper rooms. I am very frugal. I'm just gonna say that. But I do want to say, if you guys love what we're doing here on Network 1901, you should go check out what we got going on Patreon. You can either go to network1901.com, click the link from there, or just go straight to patreon.com/network1901. See all the perks that we got going on over there. If you're willing to donate or support the show and just want to like throw us maybe $1 every month, you can do that on there. But what do we got going on Patreon that people might be interested in, Josh?
Well, I kind of overhauled some things. So Goldbluming right now is our Friday show, right? That is kind of coming to an end here very soon. Jay is from the Story Geeks is my co-host, but everything from, we never asked for anything more than $30. You can definitely give us more than $30 if you want, but the top tier is, was that you trying to be Goldblum?
Yeah.
That was beautiful. But right
Thanks.
now, if for $1 you can be in your name will be in our brand new outro for all of our videos, and then for that same $1 we're gonna try and do an audio podcast just for patrons a week. So like right now with Goldbluming, we've been doing these what would Jeff Goldblum do scenarios, which is like wacky, fun, silly scenarios, and we've been doing 2 of them a week. So one of them goes into the regular show, which you can always hear if you download on iTunes or Stitcher, or we're now on Spotify. Or you can go to Patreon and you can get the second one, which is like usually about 10 minutes long, and you can get the version of that over there. And I think right now there's about 5 or 6 of them from Goldbluming up, and once Goldbluming ends, we're still going to be putting up different exclusives there. And then at I think the $5 branch, once we get enough people, we'll start doing live chats just like this, but like just much more interactive. And then there's a shirts and stickers level, and then there's also at the $30 level you can be a guest host on the DCC, and we're going to stick to that. And so like at the $30 level, which is our highest level, you can be a guest on one of our podcasts / videos, because DCC is both.
Right, and we're constantly revamping our Patreon page, so look out for like new stuff that we might be doing for our different dollar amount patrons. But the nice thing is, even if you just do $1, you basically get all the bonus content. So at least that, right? Yeah, at least you get that. And then everything above that is just kind of an extra bonus on top of that. So go check us out. Just see if you're interested. If you're not, at least you checked it out, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you gave it a chance. And that's all we can ask.
So thank you guys for hanging with us, even though we started way later than we should have, totally by mistake. I'll still be hanging out in the chat for a little while after, so if you want to chat with me, I'll be typing in my little answers and talking to people.
That's what he looks like when he's doing it.
I'm like kind of a weasel. That's how I type typically. But yeah, thanks Angie for hosting the show, and thanks for considering me your historian.
You're welcome, Josh, and thank you for being so knowledgeable and sharing all your information with all of us. And until next time, guys, hurry back. And then this is awkward now because Josh isn't ready to say his
I wasn't
thing.
ready for the outro. Keep on moving, people. That's the thing. Yeah.